I've always liked the quote in The Dark Knight where Harvey Dent says, "You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain." The only thing is, for me, it's usually the opposite. I start off as the villain, and at the end, I end up a hero of sorts. And following some interesting developments regarding James Gunn's Superman movie that we've had in the last 24 hours, I think it's fair to say that I've been vindicated. Again. Specifically, I'm talking about my analysis for the box office performance of James Gunn's Superman at the time of its release in the summer of 2025. Now, if you recall, a lot of people at the time were quick to say that it was a huge box office success for Warner Brothers, and not just the usual suspects in the mainstream media or those kind of online shills, but you even had some more independent YouTubers really declaring the movie a big win for Warner Brothers, even though the numbers didn't support that type of reporting at all. And honestly, at that time, when I did my own analysis reports on Superman's box office, it even caused rifts between me and other people, including other creators, and even some longtime subs of this channel. But in spite of all the pushback, I never changed my position because I had firmly believed that my reporting was solid. As I've said a number of times, based on the kind of money that was invested in James Gunn's Superman, Warner Brothers had expected the movie to perform somewhere in the $800 million to $1 billion range worldwide. The movie ended up making $615 million, which was even significantly less than Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, which, after adjusting for inflation, really put James Gunn's box office to shame. And considering that with much stronger box office numbers, Snyder's Man of Steel was supposedly seen as a disappointment for Warner Brothers at the time of its release, that would mean that if nothing else, James Gunn would be considered an even bigger disappointment. Now, I know some people will bring up that the movie theaters are hurting these days, but I will still argue that there are big tentpole movies that still draw big audiences. Just this summer, the 8th entry in a rather tired dinosaur franchise made $869 million at the worldwide box office with a movie that was mostly forgettable. So the way I saw it at the time, people who were touting James Gunn's Superman as a big success were either genuinely misinformed or perhaps they were influenced by their own enjoyment of the movie. And I myself was accused of being a Snyder bro because I didn't enjoy James Gunn's Superman. That was complete nonsense though. I don't just report on movies' box office based on my personal feelings. For example, I didn't enjoy the Barbie movie either, but if you watch my review from a few years ago, I tell people in the video that while I don't prefer the movie, I think it's going to be a big hit, and indeed it was, and I never said it wasn't. On the other hand, I enjoyed Mission Impossible 7 when it came out, but I never argued that it was ultimately a box office flop, even though I was rooting for it to succeed, because that's what the numbers say. And at the end of the day, the numbers are the numbers when it comes to box office, and personal sentiments are completely irrelevant. And when it comes to the Snyder bro accusations, my opinions about Zack Snyder have always been consistent over the years. I don't hate everything he's done, but there were certainly decisions in his movies that I would have done differently. Personally, I think that Snyder is the type of director that if you give him a solid screenplay, he can make a good movie. I do have an issue with some of the screenplays in the DCEU, and I've never been shy about talking about that. At the same time, I've also said that I think James Gunn has done some competent work on movies like Guardians of the Galaxy, but I also said that I didn't think he was a good fit for Superman because he turned it into this kind of cynical joke. And I don't think that's the right atmosphere of a movie that features Superman should have. Superman has always seemed like a noble, confident, heroic guy to me that commands the respect of the people around him, not a guy that gets mocked upstage and constantly kicked around like in James Gunn's movie. But again, regardless of my personal sentiments, if Superman by James Gunn would have made, let's say, $900 million worldwide at the box office, I would have reported that it was indeed a success, even if I myself didn't enjoy it. Now, before we dive into some latest developments, if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, I was the first person to report that Superman was a box office flop, and I was also the first to report that James Gunn was effectively demoted behind the scenes at Warner Brothers, limiting him to what he started calling the Superman saga. And if you want the most accurate and honest analysis from an independent entertainment news reporter like myself, please take a second now to like and subscribe, as it would really mean a lot to me.
Do it.
In a video on December 19th, 2025, I was also one of the first people to report that Netflix and Warner Brothers released some kind of marketing press release where they had shown the different franchises they own and how they would be working on them together. And interestingly, when they put thumbnails in the press release, James Gunn's work was nowhere to be found. Not Superman and not Peacemaker, only Zack Snyder DCEU movies and Matt Reeves' Batman appeared. And I also highlighted at the time that when Ted Sarandos, the CEO of Netflix, was interviewed and asked about the DC brand, he didn't mention James Gunn at all. All he said was that he was very excited about Matt Reeves' Penguin and that he thought that it was great. And I thought that that was very telling. Again, some people complained about my video saying, "How dare you say all this stuff?" And today we finally got something that's even more verification for what I've been saying all along. Because yesterday, while speaking with Congress about the Warner Brothers Netflix merger, Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos mentioned what he was planning to do with theatrical releases versus streaming, which is a point that a lot of people are interested in because this deal obviously is going to have a lot of regulatory scrutiny, especially when you also consider how a merger like this could affect the entire theatrical industry and the theaters themselves. Ted Sarandos explained that sometimes there's movies that perform better, and then there's sometimes movies that perform worse. The ones that perform better stay longer in the theater, like Sinners, and the ones that underperform end up being rushed to streaming. Now, I'm paraphrasing, let's hear what he said.
Routinely, movies that underperform, the window moves a little bit. As Superman was a little shorter window, and Sinners was a little longer window, but they still could refer to it as a 45-day window.
I don't think there's really any way around it. By giving an example of a movie that had to go to streaming quickly because it didn't deliver the numbers that they expected, it's clear, it's very, very clear that Superman underperformed, and in spite of all the mainstream media and all the shills and all the enthusiasts, at the end of the day, you just can't ignore what the numbers tell you. And that's all I was trying to say at the time. Now, people often tell me, listen, it may have been a minor flop, but it wasn't a huge flop. And you know what? I'll give you that. Probably by the time they rolled out Superman into streaming, they probably were able to somehow make their money back. But when a studio like Warner Brothers puts out such an important tentpole movie to launch a new cinematic franchise for what they consider one of their biggest IPs, and that movie has to be rushed to streaming so they could possibly break even, that's probably not what they had intended when they greenlit that movie. This was a movie that had certain goals that it needed to meet. Initially, even the media was admitting this. Then they all kind of started changing their story. But it's pretty clear that this movie needed to make more money, and a studio like Warner Brothers definitely expected more. And this whole situation with Congress and the fact that until now, Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos hasn't really been talking about Gunn gives me the feeling that Sarandos may not be so keen on James Gunn's brand of DC output. Now, it doesn't mean that he won't give him a chance to do anything, and I'm sure that Supergirl and Lantern are going to be big tests for Gunn, because if they're not big hits, I think it'll be a problem for him. But this whole fairy tale of Gunn being the best and everybody thinking that he's the best at both Warner Brothers and Netflix, that's simply not true. I've said it from the moment Superman was released, and if you go back to my videos from a few years ago, when Gunn was appointed co-CEO of DC, even then, I had expressed concern about James Gunn's suitability for this role, because I felt that his specific style of films would not work well with the DC franchise. And however you feel about my reports, I think that at least when it comes to Gunn and DC, I've been pretty much right about everything that I said, and people that were trying to either mock me, or troll me, or get upset at me, or accuse me of things, all ended up being in the wrong. As for all the other stuff that's currently happening, I'm not really sold on all the hype James Gunn has been trying to build up around his DCU Batman. We recently heard reports that Christina Hodson, who wrote the terrible Birds of Prey movie, would write his Batman movie. We also heard that Andy Muschietti, who directed the awful Flash movie, has been picked to direct the DCU Batman. But the truth is, beyond some rumors that I suspect James Gunn himself has circulated, as far as I know, nobody has greenlit James Gunn's DCU Batman movie. And it's really easy to spread some rumors with people that are kind of in your clique working with you on stuff anyways. So I think that this was a sort of a ploy, in my opinion, this whole rumor mill about these guys working with Gunn on the DCU movie. Just my opinion, of course. And with the lack of enthusiasm I see towards Gunn from both Warner Brothers, Netflix, and even Paramount, at least at this very moment, the DCU Batman movie seems to be more talk and less concrete. Now, as I said, if Supergirl and Lanterns are unprecedented successes, maybe that could change, but for now, it just seems like more spin from James Gunn's camp. Again. Superman. And as for Zack Snyder, I think he's eager to continue his Justice League story or to revisit the DCEU in some way with a standalone Batman movie, but the current merger mess has probably put his plans on hold, at least for now. Again, that could also change at any given moment, but as I keep telling people, I don't want to make these kind of grand declarations because there is a lot that's still in limbo. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue to monitor the situation, and if you want to keep getting exclusive analysis and DCU updates from an independent reporter like myself, please make sure to like and subscribe, as it would really help support my efforts. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I'm such an awesome guy. I make so